Yeah, I think for those that obviously have the means, there's many different changes we can make in our day-to-day lives. You could look to, if you haven't already, switch to an energy tariff, an electricity tariff that's produced from 100% renewable energy. Um, you could drive less. Reducing road car kilometres by 20% is part of Scotland's roadmap to net zero by 2045. You could drive electric. Obviously, that's I would suggest if that's the way that you like to go, then ensure that you're charging from home, that your energy tariff is a green tariff. Otherwise, you might not be incurring any emissions at the tailpipe, but the emissions caused to produce your electricity, upstream, kind of negates some of the benefits. So think about that. There's been a lot recently in the news about the carbon footprint associated with the food that we eat. So trying to not purchase food that's been imported from the other side of the world. Buy buy fruit and veg that are in season. Locally if you can, to avoid racking up additional carbon emissions on your plate. I mean, ultimately, it'll come down to personal choice and the amount of financial burden we can take on. And unfortunately, it's one that many people can't afford. And that's the challenge, is when we're talking about these sort of existential crises, and things are unfortunately becoming more forward in our minds with what's happening on the news. But the challenge is putting it on individuals and making it our individual responsibility rather than a collective responsibility. So, I mean, there's other things. There's many charitable causes, I'm sure, that people could look into. Getting involved in planting trees, cleaning up beaches, etc. But ultimately, I think the most difference we can make as individuals is at the ballot box. Right through from local elections through to our general elections. If as I feel it should be, the environment is one of your top priorities, then look at what the political parties are proposing, and weigh that when you're balancing up who you're going to vote for.
Great. Fantastic. For the moment, Ryan, thank you. Martin, if I can hand back to you to facilitate some further questions and answers, if that's okay.
Yep. And thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Michael. Well done, Ryan. You handled some tough political questions there rather well. You're a natural politician, so well done. And I admire your confidence in politicians. It's not an experience that I've shared in my long life, but I hope you're right. So if you've got a question, folks, just raise your hands and we'll take it in order. David's the first one to raise a hand, and remember to come off mute as you ask your question. Over to you, David. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Ryan, for answering those questions. You mentioned about carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. I wondered what the other greenhouse gases are and where they come from and how we can reduce them.
One of the big ones is methane. That comes from degrading waste, and also when people talk about the impact of like beef farming, the amount of methane produced by cows is very high. And the problem with methane is that 1 unit of methane, so say 1 meter cubed of methane, if that's released to the atmosphere, it's actually 22 times more effective as a greenhouse gas than the equivalent unit of CO2. So basically, its ability to trap in heat is far higher than CO2's ability. So that's why at landfill, for example, there's a lot of methane that'll come off from degrading waste. So capturing this methane and even burning it and producing carbon dioxide rather than methane is actually a benefit. So that's why there's a lot of push in terms of reducing our meat consumption, because methane's a big emitter from that sector. It's probably the main other one that I can think of. Is obviously a lot of sort of other pollutants, nitrous oxides, etc., associated with car pollution. But I'd say methane is one to keep an eye on. And it's interesting because I know you made the point about trusting politicians. I know there is a hesitancy at government level to recommend that people eat less meat, because obviously there's a lot of the economy, the farm economy, is propped up on very traditional, long-standing practices. But the reality is, cows aren't great. Cows aren't great. So anything you can do, if you can eat less meat, or I mean, I'm not a vegan. I'm not gonna claim to be. So I do enjoy a little bit of meat now and then. So anything we can do would be I think a benefit.
Thank you.
Thank you, David, for your question, and Ryan, good answer. Just following up David's question, just very briefly, Ryan, is the logic of your argument about the beef industry an expectation that we will end up with no farm animals? Is that the logic of that argument?
Oh, I mean, it's a complex question. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure whether or not at the moment with our population that we have, whether we have the means to feed all 7.7 billion of us without, the sort of traditional farming practices that we have. It is always a question I ask myself when I see a lot of these promotional adverts and pieces of clips online about going vegan. It's do we have the means and the resources to transition? How quickly can we transition? It's probably a slightly larger question than I know the answer to be honest. I think easy for us in the developed world with our comfortable lives to say that we can make these sacrifices, move to plant-based food, but in reality there's a lot of the world that don't have that luxury.